I keep going back to this idea of choice. And you write about this in Strength to Strength, and I think it's phenomenal. But you make what I think is the ultimate countercultural argument right now, which is happy, this elusive drug that we're all chasing culturally, is a series of choices. And I go back to sitting with people who lost children, who've lost lost everything, who've been whatever the marginalization, whatever it is. And we always land on the same question. What are you going to do now? What are we going to do now?
We have an enormous amount of power. It's not unlimited, as you say.
It's bounded.
And we have different circumstances.
That's right.
I mean, some people have much harder lives than I do.
Right.
And one of the things that we use to shut each other down is you're talking from a position of privilege.
That's right.
You can't understand what I'm going through because of whatever your characteristics are.
Fill
in the blank,
right.
For sure. But that's just a way to shut down the debate. That's a way to make it impossible for people to be empowered. And the reason for that is because the victim industrial complex is being manipulated by people that want to conscript us into a culture war by enraging us by the fact that we have no power.
Is it that intentional?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's how all activism works.
Right.
That's how it works. And I'm not anti-activism per se, but I understand how it works as a social scientist, which is that you link people together in their shared sense of victimization.
But that underneath that is a patting on the head. You'll never be able to do this.
Yeah, or you need me, or we need some outside circumstance to change. And so, and again, sometimes we should work for change. We should work for greater justice. No, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is, you have one life. And if you're waiting for the outside world to change, for you to get happier, you're going to be in trouble.
Right.
And I talk to people all day long, and so do you. I mean, you talk to them on the radio all day long. They're like, I don't know, Dr. Delony, I don't think I can be happy until my husband does X, Y, and Z.
Right.
I don't think I can be happy until I get a raise at work.
Right.
I don't think I can be happy until my health improves. Right? Okay. I understand those outside circumstances. Let's work for those outside circumstances. But the majority of your time, the big bulk of your time should be dedicated to managing what you can manage, which is you. And when people cross that Rubicon, when people realize that for the first time, their life changes literally.
Yeah.
It starts, and I opened this book that I wrote last year, Oprah Winfrey, and I wrote a book called Build the Life You Want, which is about how to get happier. Not get happy because, no negative emotions, you're dead.
There's no finish line.
Yeah. And you and I believe that you will be happy, just not here.
Yeah, right.
So, but the point being, you can get happier, and the way that you do that is by no longer looking at your outside circumstances as the source of where you should be focusing your energy. I start the book by talking about my mother-in-law. I loved my mother-in-law. I was very close to my mother-in-law. I was closer to my mother-in-law than I was to my mother for all sorts of reasons. I saw her more. I talked to her more. She loved me too. Yeah, she liked me. I loved her anyway. And she had a really tough life. She grew up in the Spanish Civil War. That wasn't the hard part. On the contrary, she has happy memories of a family that was close, et cetera. The problem was, after the Spanish Civil War, she fell in love with a guy, married the guy, and he wasn't a good husband. And he was running around all the time. He was a Spanish husband in that period, and they cheated a lot, and it broke her heart. And then he finally took off with a woman who was the same age as her oldest son, and didn't pay child support. So my wife grew up in poverty with a single mother, and sometimes the lights would go off, and it was a bad situation. And to top it all off, my mother-in-law was still in love with her ex-husband. And she would see him coming to work because the apartment they lived in Barcelona was across the street from the factory that he managed.
Yikes.
And she would see him coming to work every day, from taking the subway into work from the place where he lived with the other woman and had a son and the whole thing. And she would sit at the window and cry. And one day she had this like the scales fell from her eyes. She realized that she could rebuild her own life, notwithstanding the fact that thing was breaking her heart. And she said, look, I have tons of control here. And so she went back to school. She got her teaching certificate. She started to support her family. She got her own friends. She rebuilt her own faith. She built her life on her own terms. And when I met her at 59, she was 59 years old, and she had been doing this for 10 years. She was just like
a gangster. Yeah.
Yeah. And she had let the guy come home. by then. So he, like his much younger old lady
of course.
had tossed him because, live by the sword, die by the sword.
Right.
And he wants to come home. And she's like, yeah, but it's not going to be the same anymore.
It's my house now.
It's my house now. And they had, and so I used to say to her, or she used to say to me, yeah, I've been married 60 years, 46 happy years. 14 of them, he was gone. It was no good. And when he came back, we did it the right way. And they died happy. They died happy because she had rebuilt her life, not because she had gotten the marriage that she wanted. That outside circumstance was not perfect, and she couldn't turn back the clock, and she could not erase the past.
She could choose what happened the next minute.
She rebuilt her life, and she made herself into a different person. That's the reason that Oprah and I call the book "Build the Life You Want." Build your life. Yeah. That's what it comes down to. Don't build the outside world. That's very inefficient.
Right.
That's like saying, yeah, I don't know. I got these tires on my car that keep popping on the road, so I need a big rubber road that doesn't pop the tires on my car.
Yeah, it's not reality.
No, it's not. Man. It's not.
That to me feels like the missing ingredient, which is agency, which is one of the core foundations of mental health.
They call it self-efficacy in our world, right? But what it comes down to is understanding.
But it's been robbed. It's been taken
completely, and it's been. Look, sometimes it's intentional. The activism complex in our country wants you not to feel
agency.
They don't want that. They want to be your savior.
Dependency.
They want to be your savior, and that's a huge problem.
I guess I both have to grieve because I participated in that for so long. And also, I realize I rob people. Like, I think as a culture, we rob people.
We do. And this is another thing. This is a side note, however. There are some things that are out of your control. And the PhD in Delony studies, if I may, is learning not just to take agency over the things over which you can have agency, which is more than you think. It's also abandoning yourself to the holy will.
That's right.
That's really what it's all about, right? I mean, there's a St. Alphonsus Liguori wrote a book called The Abandonment to the Will of God, right? And again, if you're Christian like you or me, it's easier.
Right.
But there is a supernatural metaphysical will to which you can abandon yourself, which has this incredible level of comfort.
Yeah.
That for everybody. It's funny because, my kids are older than yours, and my kids are all grown up and they have kids at this point. They're in their 20s at this point. But, they got married young, started having kids young, thank God, because, I'm selfish and I like being a granddad. Right. But, when one of my kids was in high school and was just a problem, and we were worried. I mean, we were really worried. Like, where's this going to go? What does this mean? What kind of crisis is this going to turn into, right? And finally, my wife, she adopted a prayer. And people who are not religious can adapt this as they see fit. She used to say, Lord, my son's name is Carlos. Lord, you have a problem with Carlos. How can I help?
Oh, man. Wow.
It was very reassuring.
Yeah.
Because, look, there's some things that are out of your control.
Carlos.
Yeah. And some of this is out of my control.
Yeah.
Now, this is important for parents because, religious or not, you can't live their lives.
No.
You cannot. And to a certain extent, you got to let go. And not completely, because you're going to help them whenever, and you are the safety net to the extent that you can be, but you can't live their lives. You can't feel their emotions. Right. And, that faith is really super helpful in this. But just the abandonment to the cosmic will in and of itself can give you this freedom.
Yeah.
That you couldn't have otherwise.
I had a grad school professor, and she said, if you're in this class, you can do gymnastics with words. All of you can. So you're not going to write down your vision or your passion or what. She said, I just want you to draw a picture of why you're here. I was like, that's stupid. We're all adults. I was wearing a suit. I just come from my day job, and I'm here. This is dumb. And I mold it. And at the end, here was my picture, and it was a crudely drawn thing. I wish I'd saved it. But it was me sitting on a curb with a cigarette lighter and somebody else leaning over with their cigarette, and everything was on fire behind them. And I didn't have words for, I'll just sit with you. And I remembered back to being 16, working my first job at Burger King. And I learned real quick, dude, you can just make somebody's day if you just stop that fog and you say, hey, how are you? And they click on. And I'm good. How are you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'll just sit with you. Or when you're sitting with somebody who just lost everything, and like, I'll sit here. But it was that I'm going to surrender this to this job title or to this amount of money and I got to tell you, man, everything has shifted since that.
Yeah. Very helpful. And there's one point to turn that around, to turn that matrix even one more notch.
Okay.
When you're talking, when you have, when you're in the process of grief, when you're in the process of loss, at the very beginning, you need somebody who will sit with you, who will simply love you, to be sure.
That's right.
But the process of grief actually turns into the process of healing when you do one big thing, which is when you become the person who's sitting with somebody else.
That's it.
You want to heal? Go heal somebody.
That's right.
Go love somebody. That's the key
sit with
thing.
them.
Yeah, this is the funny thing because, thank God I've never lost a child, right? Come close. But one of the things that you see, because I've worked with people who have lost children, and again, this is not, you lose a spouse, you lose a parent, that's sad, but it feels natural. You lose You lose a spouse and it's really, real grief, but you sign up for that, right? It's like, when we're men, we're actually signing up for being the one who dies first.
Of course, right.
Everybody assumes that, right? And that's hard. But losing a child is a different kettle of fish.
It's out of order.
It's out of order, and you can't justify it, and it's not fair, and it doesn't feel right. But one of the ways that people actually instigate the process of healing who have lost children is they start to try to help people who have lost children more, and the experience is fresher than theirs.
Yeah.
And to say, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to hurt. And let me tell you what the pain turns into. And let me tell you, the pain gets better. It's not perfect. No. It's bad. I wake up and I cry a lot, et cetera, that people say, but
I'll be here.
But it's not the same. It's not the same. It's gonna be better than it is right now. And that process of helping somebody else is really one of the most metaphysical truths that we can find. See, Mother Nature wants you to only focus on yourself and your pain, because Mother Nature doesn't care if you're happy.
Right.
Mother Nature just wants you to live another day, pass on your genes, and pay attention to the psychodrama, and you're the star in it, right? Literally, your dreams at night, you're the star of every single dream. Right. It's just terrible. Right. It's tedious and boring and terrifying all at once. You can turn the tables on that and get happier by zooming out on you, by becoming little and making the universe large. And the best way that you can go do that is to go love somebody, to go serve somebody, to go help somebody. And in your moments of greatest pain, when you do that, you get the weirdest, most immediate relief.
It's like somebody takes the weight off the bar.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Somebody asked me last night doing a Q&A, and they had gone through a series of loss and pregnancy losses, and that was the question. And I actually think it's a curse now because we live, and it won't last forever because it can't hold. The center can't hold. But the question was, how do we move on? How do we heal? But the question was more geared towards, like, how do we start a podcast about this? Or how do we turn it into a course on? And that's my answer was, you don't. Like, you can't, I got struck by lightning. That's not going to happen. Can you sit with somebody who also lost a kid? Because that's when you'll never make sense of it. But there's a strange redemption. A flower will grow from that soil, right? And it's not sexy and it's not on TV, but I'll sit with you. Yeah. Right. And that becomes this weird, you leave and it's a little lighter. And
this is why your anxiety work is so important. Yeah. Because you have learned that serving other people who are anxious has helped you to understand and be less anxious.
Just get your eyes out of your belly.
Yeah. This is the secret to getting happier, is you should be a happiness teacher. That's the reason I teach a class called Leadership and Happiness. And on the first day of class, I said, I want all of you to join me as happiness teachers. And I got 1 semester to get that done. If you want to be happier, I don't care how unhappy you are. I want you to be a happiness teacher.
So if we'll close with this. I get my first job and I'm head of a company. Yeah. I finally get hired as the boss. Right. Or my small little division. Right. Give me a couple of bullet points that I can walk in and say, I can help start making changes in this culture.
Yeah. To begin with, you need to understand yourself. The number one management challenge that you have, the number one HR issue that you've got is you. Yep. That's what it comes down to. If you cannot lead yourself, you cannot lead others. You cannot be a happiness teacher unless you're actually understanding yourself as much as you possibly can. put on your own oxygen mask first. There's nobody in the history of employment who wants to work for a miserable SOB.
Right.
Nobody wants that. By the way, that's the same thing if the firm is your family.
Your marriage, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because you're only as happy as your unhappiest child. That's idiocy.
Yeah.
You should not be as unhappy as your unhappiest child. You should not be, because you have a responsibility to not be as unhappy as your
you can't be tethered to
unhappiest
your
child.
kid. Yeah.
You cannot do that, because all you do is you drag everybody down under the circumstances. You have a responsibility to model the process of becoming a happier person, because that's the gift you want to give your children.
Love it.
That's narcissistic for you to be as unhappy as your unhappiest child, is the way that actually works. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. If you're not serious about your happiness, you're not serious about leadership. That's the first thing that comes into it. The second thing is, the more that you're actually thinking about the happiness of the people around you and thinking about lifting people up in bonds of happiness and love, and using your job as a vehicle for that, then you will actually be on the path to getting that done. Those are the two things to remember.
Conversely, you will only be happy if they perform for you. And this is a place for you to exercise power.
Exactly.
And that's the modern workplace.
That's often the modern workplace, but that's not the most successful people. There's
No,
some people
it's
who have
not.
that, who are successful in spite of that,
Right.
who are that good. And that's sort of the tech bro entrepreneur who's like a genius, has great ideas, and is a jerk.
Right.
And who's selfish and narcissistic and Machiavellian.
But does that center ever hold?
It doesn't, and ordinarily those people are so miserable that they actually can't sustain that for a very long time. But some are so brilliant that they can get away with it in spite of it. The mistake that we make is thinking that they're successful because of it. And that's not the case. You will always be more successful over the long run, over the course of your life, which is how you should be thinking about the cadence of your success, by actually thinking about these serious principles of love and happiness.
Dude, that's so good. Man, thanks for your time.
Thank you, John. Thank you for your work.
Well, I mean, this is important for me because you're one of the few people that I look to like when I get stuck or when I need some sort of, how would Arthur phrase this? And so I appreciate your voice out in the world.
Thanks.
And it's got a direct impact on
You're
human
lifting
lives,
people up
so
and bringing them together. I
you.
just happened to cross you a long time ago, and I'm thinking, that guy's making sense. That guy's speaking my language.
The gift here has always been like there's the Atias and the Hubermans in the world.
Yeah.
Can you talk to the single mom with 2 kids right now?
Right. And your superpower, if I may,
Yeah.
you never lie,
Yeah.
and you speak from a position of love.
That's it. Yeah.
Love without lies.
Yeah.
It's kind of a good tagline, isn't it?
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Man, it's a blessing. Thank you for
you, brother.
honoring us for your time.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.